So, what we're going to do is apophasis. We're going to do apophatic inquiry regarding right and wrong. So, what is not a right? What are ways that people can cause harm to other people or animals? Ways that we can cause harm to other sentient beings. One of the first thing, so what we're doing here is we're going to list the boundary conditions for natural law here, for breaking natural law. If we take these actions, we are breaking natural law because the action is a cause which results in the effect of harm to another being. All right? So these are what are simply, I call them the natural law transgressions, which means sins or wrongdoings. They're simply harmful actions that a person is capable of taking to another being, against another being. That's all. So of course many people will get the first one. What's one of the main horrible wrong things that somebody can do to another person? Kill them. Murder them. Take their life. Okay? Murder. And I would distinguish murder from killing as well. Because occasionally, to defend oneself, killing may be necessary. But murder is always immoral and wrong. Okay? See, the fifth commandment in Hebrew, do you know what it says in Hebrew? It does not say thou shalt not kill. The term for murder in Hebrew is tirzach. The fifth commandment in Hebrew is lo tirzach, which means do not murder. Murder as a verb in Hebrew is a completely different word and a totally different connotation than the verb to kill. Because what they're saying is don't take life without any right to take it, meaning that you initiated the violence, and that's what murder is. It's the initiation of the taking of somebody else's life when you had absolutely no right to take that life. Now, if someone is coming after you, your rights, there may be times when you do have to take defensive action and forceful action, up to and including deadly force. We're going to talk about that later. But murder is the first natural law transgression. And if you want to go down to a subsection of this transgression, you could list it as a totally separate wrongdoing. I'm keeping it in the same basic category. Assault, meaning you're directly physically accosting without right the well-being, the bodily well-being of another being, is also, it's like, it would be, you could consider it attempted murder. Because assault is something that you do without right. If someone assaults somebody, they have no right to commit assault. Never exists. The right to commit assault does not exist. The right to commit murder does not exist in any circumstance, ever. Blanket statement. The right to defend oneself through physical force exists, and possibly in certain circumstances, the right to kill exists. But murder and assault can never be rights, because they always are done by being initiated without the right to do so. It is the initiation of violence. All right? Rape is the second natural law transgression. Okay? You're coercing the free will of another person and making them sexually associate with whom they wish not to. That's rape. And it's always wrong. Blanket statement. All right? The third natural law transgression is theft. It is the taking of property that does not belong to you. Someone else, got that property through lawful means without hurting somebody else. That's their property for as long as they are using it and being responsible for it. And you don't have a right to just take what doesn't belong to you. Nobody has a right to take my projector or my remote control or my computer any more than I would have the right to take Richard's cameras. Okay? It would be theft of somebody else's property. It's not mine. And this is the problem. We don't understand property. As we're going to get to, all rights are property rights. We'll get to that in a moment. That's the third natural law transgression. The fourth is trespass. And that means going into somebody else's lair that they are using, that they own lawfully and that they're responsible for, without their permission or consent, and you're just invading their privacy and their space, and you're taking their security away from them in that process. And we do have a right to set aside a place for ourselves for our own lair. Okay? And to violate that is to trespass against somebody else in their own property. The fifth and last natural law transgression is coercion. This is forcing somebody through the threat of violence to have their will comply with your will, whether they don't wish that to be the case or not. Making somebody do something that is against their will, coercing them. And that's also not a right. Now, that's a small list. Very small list, right? We could add one more. We could add lying. Lying is also a wrongdoing. Okay? And I would consider that a theft of truth or a withholding of truth that somebody needs to understand to make accurate and informed decisions, lying to them. Okay? But essentially, these 5 are the overarching natural law transgressions. I challenge anybody to come up with a wrongdoing that doesn't fit into one of these categories. So far, I've never had one person able to do it. Any wrongdoing, any action that you could think of that doesn't fall into one of these wrongdoings. Yep. I would probably categorize it as pure ignorance, but, I would say, hey, maybe you could look at it like that because that's propagating the slavery system indirectly. So, you're actually, you're not doing anything to help anybody else's freedom, certainly. I don't know if I would categorize that as a natural law transgression because, it's giving consent and propping up that system. It's not technically what I would call an action, but it's more of like giving consent. Hey, you could say that is a wrongdoing, I guess, because giving your consent is tacitly saying yes to control, and that's ultimately affecting everybody else's freedom negatively. So, possibly. But in general, what I would say is if you could think of an actual physical action that doesn't fall into one of those categories, let me know. Because that's a pretty comprehensive list, and it's only like, 6 words. So, now, what if I told you I could narrow it down? What if I told you I can get rid of 5 of those words and take it down to 1? Okay? These are the wrongdoings. Let's try to narrow it down, right? Okay? Every harmful action that a human being is capable of taking is a form of theft. Now, many people will hear that for the first time. I've never heard that said. There is no action that you can take that causes harm to another person that is not a form of theft in some form or fashion. I challenge anybody to come up with an action that isn't a form of theft, that is an action that is a wrongdoing that isn't a form of theft. You won't be able to do it. I put that challenge out on my podcast. Say, email me if you know. No, not one person. The only one person challenged it and tried to say lying. I say, okay, that's really taking the truth from somebody, thieving truth. And whether you want to look at it as you're simply dissuading them from looking at the truth too, deceiving them or not offering correct information, still you're taking away their ability to make correct judgments based on the availability of information. So it is a form of theft. Some form of property. Now look at that word. Property. Proper. Meaning right, is always being stolen when a wrongdoing is committed. All rights are property rights. All wrongs are theft of property. Once again, I challenge anybody. It's an open challenge. If you can find me a right that is not a property right, or a wrong that is not the theft of some form of property, please do it. Please let me know. Okay? Life is a form of property. So taking life you had no right to take, murder, is stealing property that wasn't your own, because that was that person's life, possessive. They own it. And I didn't have a right to just go and take it for no reason. Rights are a form of property, meaning actions that you may do because they are in harmony with natural law and do not cause harm to others. I don't have a right to stop you from taking. If you're not harming somebody else, nobody has a right to stop you from taking a right, taking an action. You may perform any action which does not directly result in harm to somebody else. Okay? Rights are a form of property. Freedom is a form of property. Somebody doesn't have a right to take somebody else's freedom and hold them against their will just because they don't like what they're doing. They have a distaste for what they're doing. Or they want them to comply with their behavior, with their commands. Okay? They want them to make their behavior comply with commands that they're being given. So, if you really break it down, let's look at the wrongdoings once again. Murder. Is that not the taking of somebody else's life? Assault is the taking of their right to remain unharmed in their person. You're taking their health if you assault them. Right? Their homeostasis in their body is being put under assault. And that's robbery. That's somebody taking something that isn't theirs to take. Rape. You're taking somebody else's free will to sexually associate with whom they choose to sexually associate. And therefore that's a property theft. Because that's their property, their free will. Theft itself says it right there. You're taking physical possessions that aren't yours to take from somebody else. Stealing. Trespass, you are taking someone's security in their own lair, as we talked about, which you don't have a right to take. That's also their property. Coercion, what are you taking? Somebody else's free will, which isn't yours to take. That's a gift from the Creator, which belongs to each individual. And if somebody's coercing somebody by telling them, you must do this because I said so, and if you don't do this, I will come and do some form of harm to you, that's not a right. That's a wrongdoing. Coercion. And it's a form of theft. Exactly. Sure. You must buy this. Imagine this. Great. We're going to take 5 more minutes and then we're going to take an hour and 15-minute break. So all of these things are forms of wrongdoing, and they're all ultimately one wrongdoing in different forms. They are all theft. Every one of them. There is only one wrongdoing. There's only one way anybody can wrong anybody else. Stealing. That's it. Every form of wrongdoing is a form of theft against another being and their property. A living being or their property must have been harmed in order for a violation of natural law or wrongdoing to have taken place. Any action which does not cause such harm is a right. There's the apophatic definition of a right. Through understanding what a wrongdoing is. And I'm telling you, billions of people, not millions, not hundreds of millions, billions of people on this planet do not know this. Could not tell you this. Because this is it. This is it, folks, right here. This is the crux of natural law. What is a right? What is a wrong? And I couldn't sleep last night. After we got home, and I never have problems sleeping. Ever. Ever. I'm just going to tell you this before we break. I was laying in bed last night before I went to sleep for the night. Could not sleep because all I was thinking of is how preposterous. I told this to some people at lunch. I'm just sitting there thinking about how preposterous and ridiculous it is for me to even ever have to utter any of this. The fact that this is not 100% pure common sense knowledge on the earth is so abominably preposterous to me that all I was sitting there thinking is, how could I be going out and explaining this to people? This is what I must do? Me, though. It was almost like schizophrenic in a way. Because I was just thinking, I was waking up and then falling back to sleep and waking up thinking, where am I? Why am I here? And I'm the person who's coming out and doing this. And it's just so absurd and ridiculous to me. Some punk from South Philadelphia taking in the knowledge of the mystery traditions and teaching them to people. Me. It's the most ridiculous thing. I can't even imagine it, you know? I still can't. I can't imagine that it's necessary, you know? That's the position that our society is in. It's so profoundly sad that I can't believe it. And unless we deeply start to understand this and propagate this knowledge to other people, things are going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And there's no reason for it. There's no reason to go down that path. We want to choose the way of maximum pain because we don't want to give up thoughts that we're addicted to just because the pattern has been there for as long as we can remember. We would rather go down the path to the grave and the abyss rather than admit we were wrong and just say, I need to give up this negative way of thinking. You know? I'm going to leave it right there and just say the bottom line to what this section comes down to is if someone hasn't been harmed, no wrongdoing has been committed. No victim, no crime, in other words. Many people insist, oh, there doesn't have to be a victim for there to be a crime committed. You know how many people are rotting away in a jail cell right now as we speak who have never harmed another living being? You know how many people? Tens of thousands. Okay? And no one has any right to hold them. Unless you've harmed somebody else, nobody has a right to stop you from continuing to take the action that you are taking. Okay?